When we get to your introduction, you get to share that. So I'll start off with introducing Taryn Pressler. Taryn is the lead housing resource specialist at NEMSCA, the HARA for Northeast Michigan. And during the winter, Taryn likes to build a lot of snowmen. I'm thinking, Taryn, you may have small children in your house. Okay, yep. I don't think there's anything wrong with building snowmen though as adults either. So we also have with us Elise Gapczynski, who is the housing resource specialist with NEMSCA's Homeless and Prevention Services. Again, the HARA for Northeast Michigan. And Elise likes to get outside, and they've got a cottage on Long Lake where they like to go ice fishing and spend time outdoors, which I think we could all be jealous of. Debbie Newman is our senior resource specialist in the rental assistance and homeless solutions area at MSHDA. And Debbie likes to go hiking outdoors. I think there's a theme here about being outdoors in the winter on any of the good days we can take advantage of. Hiking around Rose Lake, which is a beautiful area, absolutely gorgeous area. And then we have Cindy. Cindy Imlott is with Tip of the Mitt Housing. She's a housing agent for MSHDA, and she gets through winter by knowing that summer is coming. And I think any of us that live here in Michigan know that the reason we do it is because we appreciate spring and summer so much more when we made it through winter. So lastly, we have Victoria Purvis, and Victoria is the Homeless and Prevention Director at NEMSCA, the HARA for Northeast Michigan. And Victoria, what do you like to do to get through the winter?
I do not like to be outside. I like to travel to warmer states.
That's fair enough. I think that's wonderful. I was going to say, take those vacation days, save them up for winter and get out.
You got it.
A great way to get through it too. So wonderful. Well, I'm so happy that all of our presenters are here today to share great information with us. And so I think I'm going to be turning it over to you now, Victoria. Is that right?
Yeah, we are up first.
Okay.
And do you have our PowerPoint or do we need to share?
That would be, you guys would go ahead and share it if you've got it.
Okay. Taryn, would you be able to pull that up?
Yep, give me 1 second.
And then while Taryn's pointing that up again, I just want to remind people to go ahead and use the chat function for your Q&A, and I will keep an eye on that, and then we will come back to those questions. We've got 2 presentations, so at the end of each presentation, we'll take a pause and answer any questions that people might have. So please do feel free to use that chat function.
Okay, somebody's gonna have to let me know when you can see it.
Yep, I'll let you know when it comes up.
Did it come up?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, I hit share. It's not letting me share it. Elise, can you try and see if you can get it to come up on your end?
Yep, 1 second.
Okay.
Do we have to be listed as presenters? Oh, we are. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you move it to where it's, yeah, there we go. Great,
Awesome.
thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our session today at the virtual summit on ending homelessness. We are going to begin our session talking to you about how we have built effective partnerships with our housing agents. My name is Victoria Purvis. I'm the housing director for Northeast Michigan Community Service Agency, also known as NEMSCA. I am accompanied by 2 other members of my team whom you've already been introduced to, Taryn and Elise, and they are also with Northeast Michigan Community Service Agency. So to give you guys a little bit of background on who we are and what we do, NEMSCA is a private, not-for-profit community action agency. We are one of 28 action agencies in Michigan, And we are also the largest community action agency in terms of employees and revenues. We cover 23 counties for our agency, and 11 of them are our core counties, which we administer our housing program with. NMSCA administers Head Start. We also have the Region 9 Area on Aging and some other community programs such as school success, weatherization, food, homebuyer education, and of course, all of the other programs that fall under housing. So many of you on this summit today probably are well aware and well associated with either your own continuum of care or you fall under the Balance Estate. The Balance Estate continuum of care represents 61 of the 83 counties in Michigan. These 61 counties are the most rural counties across the state of Michigan. And the balance of our Balance Estate COC is to work together to end homelessness by sharing best practices and combining efforts to secure housing resources. Balance Estate works to improve priorities such as strengthening system capacity and increased leverage opportunity. It is a priority of the Balance Estate COC to eliminate disproportionate rates of homelessness among communities of vulnerable population. So NMSCA, Northeast Michigan Community Service Agency, we are Region 3. We're Prosperity Region 3 of the Balance Estate. And out of the 61 counties, we cover 11 of those 61 Balance Estate counties. So our responsibility is we do the housing needs assessment and help match individuals with appropriate housing units. All 11 of our counties that we service are rural. So we are very, a lot of the Balance Estate counties are rural, but if you've ever been to any of our 11 counties, you know that there's not much up here. But as far as our service size in our 11 counties, we are actually equal to the size of Rhode Island and Connecticut combined. So we have a pretty big area and a small team. But that doesn't stop us from all of the programs that we administer. We do administer the majority of the COC programs for our service area. So we're the main point for coordinated entry. We just started street outreach. We have rapid rehousing. We have homeless prevention, emergency shelter, and more. We also employ the only regional key person at our agency that can add individuals onto the homeless preference list for housing choice voucher. So this presentation is going to deep dive into how our region has leveraged our resources in our area, the limited that we have, and ensure all households have equal access to housing resources in response from building a strong partnership, which is what we're going to talk about today, with our housing agents and other community partners. We'll discuss how we collaborate with our community partners to assess and address the needs of this population of vulnerable households. Our ultimate objective for voucher holders is to have self-sufficiency success and maintain their housing to reduce recidivism returns to homelessness. You can go next, thanks. So I just wanted to point out a few of the various programs that we have that fit under our housing umbrella, and that the HARA administers for us in Northeast Michigan. If you're curious as to who operates these programs in your area, please leave your email in the comments and I can connect you after today's meeting, because I think they are underutilized programs, but they are absolutely incredible to have. So out of the 3 vouchers that we have housing choice vouchers in our area. We have the emergency housing vouchers, which are pretty new. And then we have project-based vouchers. So which is the first one? Family self-sufficiency. So the FSS program, it's available to all of the voucher holders. And the main goal of that program is to help families maintain employment and eventually move into home ownership. So what happens is we help the participants increase their income, which in turn leads to a higher rent payment. But the difference in the rent in the rent amounts is actually deposited in an escrow account, and they can cash out that escrow account and use that as a down payment. And we have about 35 people that are voucher holders in our area that are on the FSS program. So again, if you don't know who operates that in your area, please leave your email and I can help connect you. The Key to Own program we also administer. It's a home ownership program that's offered through MSHDA. It's for individuals that have a housing choice voucher, but it enables the qualified applicants to purchase a home and continue to receive assistance with the voucher program with MSHDA. So it helps low-income households essentially get the dream of owning their own home. And the MSHDA continues their voucher payments for earned income households for up to 10 years and indefinitely for disabled individuals. And that is only available to the Housing Choice Voucher Program and the project-based voucher. It may be available to emergency housing vouchers, but it's so new that we haven't exactly gotten into that territory yet. So I'm unsure on that right now, and I haven't gotten that answered. And then finally, financial empowerment. So this kind of encompasses a whole division at our agency. And we have employed a HUD certified counselor. So she is able to offer services such as rental counseling. There are no eligibility requirements for that. So anyone of any income can be enrolled in that program. It's not just for voucher holders. We also enroll our rapid rehousing clients in that program as well. She does all sorts of budgeting with them. So creating an honest budget. And then also the biggest request that we get is the credit repair, because we know that a lot of things that, such as home ownership or purchasing a car, you need to have decent credit. So she works on them to repair their credit. So she can run credit reports and then help you improve your credit score. And then finally, home buyer and pre-purchasing counseling. So some loans do require you to have home buyer education courses. She offers all of those virtually. She offers them one-on-one. And then the pre-purchasing counseling as well, if that is a requirement, or we have some individuals that are purchasing a home and they just want to know what to expect. So those are the programs that are available to voucher holders. And that's all I have for my intro. So I will let Elise, who is the backbone of creating these partnerships, take it from here.
Thank you. So I am Elise Gapshinsky. I am a housing resource specialist with NEMSCA, and I started doing this collaboration with our housing agent. I essentially started it when we started doing the housing or the emergency housing voucher. And then it just kind of grew from there. And I started using it for our just housing vouchers and any vouchers that we have our participants working towards. So the main reasons why we decided to do this collaboration and why it's important, we wanted to see our program participants succeed into getting the long-term housing. So we feel that with us being involved with the participants and having this communication with our housing agent, we are able to kind of be the middleman, kind of get rid of those barriers that our participants have. Some of them may have issues with not having communication, like telephone or anything like that, or they might struggle with being able to read or write. They may not have a mailing address. And so then that's just creating a barrier in order for them to be able to get these vouchers. So we just seen that as an opportunity for us to get involved and kind of try and communicate with our housing agent to see what needs to be done for our participants and how we can streamline that communication, just so that they can get that voucher issued to them and get over those barriers. So we work with them. We I will kind of go through how to get the conversation started and how I did the meetings, some suggestions of how to do the meetings, and why we feel that it's overall just important in the impact that we've had. So having this communication with our housing agent, it just kind of gets a faster and easier way to get the process going. Our housing agents can communicate with us, and then we kind of relay those messages to our participants. So how we got the conversation started. So I determined who needed to be a part of the process. Using the case managers, any other housing staff that works with participants on a regular basis, and then the housing agents. Reaching out to the case managers, the housing agents, figuring out what's the best time to have a meeting. Is it best to have that meeting in person? Is it best to do it over Zoom or Teams meeting? Is it good for everybody? Like, what's their schedule like? Do we have the meetings in the morning, afternoon? And then working on, let me see here, how to get those meetings like scheduled, I guess I would say. So then with having these conversations, it's best to find creating that like safe space with the housing agent, and having open communication, open conversations, listening to any concerns that are coming up with what our process is with our programs that we have. If our housing agent has any concerns or any questions on how we do our program, or where the participants at in their program, with how our program works, we usually pay their rent the month prior. And so having that open communication and creating that safe space with us and our housing agent, they feel comfortable asking us those questions on hey, when is your rent paid for this participant in November? Did you pay this yet? Or do you mind holding off? I think we're going to be able to take over and pay their rent for November, let's just say. Just having creating that open space to have those types of conversations. Okay, so then kind of getting the steps to having these meetings. So scheduling the meetings, I suggest having for about 6 months, having these meetings at least once a month, if not twice a month. Because what's going to benefit from that is the more consistent that you have these meetings, you're going to realize the flow that you're needing to have with these meetings, and just like the conversations that you're going to need to have, kind of the flow of the conversation, and just figuring out what time works best. So having those consistent meetings is going to just let you realize what's going to work best for everybody. And then you're going to kind of figure, okay, maybe we need to have them twice a month versus just once a month, or maybe we don't need to have them twice a month. Once a month, we're getting just as much information. So scheduling those meetings to what works best for everybody, and then just figuring out how you want the conversations to flow. And then notifying the housing staff of when the meeting's occurring. So getting a hold of your coworkers, the people that are working with the participants, and letting them know, hey, I have a meeting coming up with our housing agent next week. It's at Wednesday at 2 o'clock. If you can let me know what participants you have and what participants you're needing me to follow up on. I create an agenda, which I kind of have an outline on my next slide that I'll review, of how I make a list of participants, and I include the counties on there of the participants that are working on certain vouchers. And then I include those counties because I've realized from having these meetings that it's very helpful for our housing agent, because we cover 11 counties, for them to know what county this participant was pulled in, so that they can they know where to look, what file to look in, and it kind of keeps them like more organized, so they're not just searching for John Smith. They know who they're looking for. So I notify the housing staff. They let me know, they give me their list of the participants. They might even tell me what they were working on, like, hey, we know that the landlord was supposed to turn in their paperwork. Can you make sure that they received it? So I make that list and I keep a little note of what they were working on, or if we might not know what's needed from the housing agent, I'll just put on there, I'll make myself a note and just say, what is it that you're needing from them still? Let me see here. Okay. So determining the structures and the outcomes. So I put on here to base the meetings off of voucher polls or just as needed. Again, I do suggest having these meetings at least once a month for the first 6 months, just to get that structure and the feel of having the meetings and how they're going to turn out. And then having these meetings consistently. So we have had times where we've had to maybe reschedule a meeting, but we make sure we reschedule it. We don't just go without having it, because then we're not getting all the information that we're needing of where the participants are, where they're at with their progress, or if there's anything that they need from the participants that we can help them get. So having these meetings consistently has been a great thing that we've realized definitely works. Developing an MOU just to make sure that everybody knows what's expected of the meetings, everybody's like what everybody's roles are with having the meetings, and just having that as just a guideline. And then right here I have the meeting agenda, just an example. So listing the participants that are being covered and what counties, any old tasks that are needed from the participants based on the prior meeting. So if there was a participant who at the last meeting, the housing agent stated that they were still needing birth certificates from the participant, then at this upcoming meeting, we can say, hey, did you end up getting those birth certificates? We mailed them in last week, or any new tasks that are needed to be done. So if that participant did turn in the birth certificates and now they sent out the landlord documents, then the housing agent can let you know, hey, I got those birth certificates. I sent out the landlord documents. They should be getting those in the mail within the next week. Then that way you kind of know what to follow up on. And then scheduling the next meeting. So that's always a big thing too, just to keep those meetings consistent. So, or right off the bat, scheduling, maybe the meetings should be every second Wednesday at 10 o'clock, and just keeping second Wednesday of the month at 10 o'clock. Just keeping those really consistent is definitely very helpful. Okay, and then on this side, I just put consistent communication is key. So I just kind of put on here the ways to kind of keep the communication going. So during the meeting, discussing tasks and updates for all of the participants. So what needs to be done for the participants, where they're at with their process, is everything done and they're just needing to, they're just waiting for the next months to start for their voucher to take place, or are they being denied for any reason? So just any of those updates or tasks during the meeting that you communicate with, that's just keeping that open communication. And then taking all of that information you get and updating your housing staff. So back on a few slides, I listed on there to make a list of the participants to keep notes during the meeting. Keeping those notes, and then as soon as the meeting's done, taking that back to the other housing staff that you are working with, so that they can, and you updating them on what's needed. So if they have a participant who is still missing some documents, or they maybe are needing to follow up with their housing agent, or if they're just waiting to have an inspection done, just updating the staff that's working on with those participants so that they can in return either communicate with the participant, or if they were maybe mailing a birth certificate in or something for that participant, they can say, oh, well, I mailed it in yesterday. And then we can I go back and forth with the housing agent and the staff just to keep that communication. And then lastly, I have that the housing agents send emails or updates in between the meetings. So if we are in the middle of having 2 meetings and there was an inspection that was supposed to be completed between meetings and the inspection got done and it passed, and then participant is going to be a new admission to the program, my housing agents do send emails in between letting me know that they're going to be a new admission come November 1st. And then again, keeping that open and honest communication. Any concerns or anything like that, they can let me know, hey, we're going to be ready to take over in November. Do you mind holding off and not paying their rent so that they can take over? So it's very, very helpful just keeping this consistent, open communication between us. It's definitely been a great success. Okay, and then part of getting the landlords involved in this program as well. So some of the benefits for having landlords, some ways to kind of get them involved in this and wanting to be part of this program. Some of the benefits they do receive, they would be getting some more consistent rent payments. They would have, they wouldn't have to necessarily advertise all the time. If they have an opening, they would have their places filled. And then just overall helping a vulnerable population and becoming successfully housed. Different ways to recruit. Having the face-to-face meetings is definitely beneficial. Having those conversations one-on-one versus texting or calling or email, those can be helpful as well, but I truly believe that having those face-to-face meetings is definitely very beneficial. I feel you get to, it breaks down that barrier a little bit and breaks down that wall, and it's just a little bit more personable. And then using existing landlord relationships to identify new relationships. So using examples of current landlord situations that we've had, having stories of why they enjoy working with the housing choice voucher or any of the programs, just using those as examples of ways that they benefit just to recruit those new ones. Creating and distributing brochures or flyers or having events just to, again, kind of explain all of this in person, again, that face-to-face, and just showing them the ways that they can benefit from this and help the community in general. Okay, I think that's it.
I think I'm up. Thank you, Elise. I'm Taryn Pressler. I'm the lead housing resource specialist with NMSCA. So I work with the case managers to kind of assist in the backside with streamlining this process. I want to start with talking about obstacles that housing case managers kind of find to be a major barrier when individuals are trying to lease up with the housing choice voucher. So some of these are lack of mobile phone for communication. It takes a while for government phones to come in. They might not have a mailing address. Those can't be delivered to PO boxes either. So sometimes we have to work around that. We have, mental health is a huge barrier for a lot of individuals in many aspects. Sometimes there is a lack of trust in the system because of mental health. So, that tends to be one of those barriers that we struggle with getting around, but we reach out, bring in some more supports and really, like Elise talked about, breaking down that boundary and letting them know that this is a safe space. just as much for the participants as for like housing agents. Landlords that are reluctant to work with programs tend to be an obstacle if they don't want to go through the paperwork process or the inspection process. They're concerned about what that looks like. So we just kind of communicate with them on, you know, what is expected for the inspections and what we can do to kind of help them through that process as much as the participants. And then overall in our region, I would say a lack of affordable rentals right now. There is a housing shortage, and that's been a little bit of a struggle as far as having people streamline the process and lease up with a voucher. Can you change the slide, Elise? Thank you. So the caseworkers work really hard to try and help the housing agents with their process. So one of the main things that we found that caseworkers can do is attend briefings. So even if we're not able to provide any kind of financial support, we can kind of be there and communicate with them, re-explain things in different terms. Sometimes there are barriers to reading and writing, so the case managers can really help with that during the briefing process. And then caseworkers can work to secure move-in costs from community resources. So whether you know, the individual or family is eligible for rapid rehousing funds, we can, you know, go through that process with them so that they can move into a rental while they're going through the paperwork process with tip of the mitt or their housing agent, so that they don't have to continue to be in their homeless situation while they're waiting for that voucher to take over. We also are My Bridges partners. I highly recommend caseworkers get on that with being a My Bridges partner, because it is very helpful. We can help with the SCR process and that paperwork, because that can be kind of lengthy too for move-in costs if they're not eligible for a rapid rehousing program. Next slide, Elise. So one of the big things that caseworkers do to help with the process of leasing up with a voucher is to communicate with the lease on what is expected for documentation, whatever is lacking. We've found that birth certificates are one of the major things that we need to follow up on. So we have access to assisting with the application for a state of Michigan birth certificate, so that we can get that. Case managers can also provide proof of residency if they've already been leased up into a rental unit. And if they're not, we can also provide verification of homelessness to assist in that process. Caseworkers have the ability to fax, email, and make copies of requested documents as necessary. I believe most of the housing agents are required to have hard copies of things. However, if it's a matter of timelines, then we can send them a copy so they see we have it. They can start paperwork on their end, and then we make sure that we mail the copy that they need so they get it timely. Next slide, thank you. So this is a program impact. This was a gentleman who was literally homeless when he contacted our agency, and you know, a divorce left him in his car and he didn't know what to do. So he started out going through our intake process. He had a street outreach worker who worked with him to try and find housing. That street outreach worker got him on the homeless preference wait list for the housing choice voucher. And then when he was able to find a unit and he was pulled, the case manager took over, helped with paperwork, sent copies to the housing agent of, I think, Social Security card and other proof of income. And now Mark is stably housed and he has a long-term subsidy with the housing choice voucher. So he doesn't have to worry about rent and utilities, and he was able to get his van fixed so that he had a safe vehicle as well. And here is all of our contact information. If you need to reach us, like Victoria said, if you put your contact information in the chat, we can also reach out to provide additional information.
Thank you, Elise, Victoria, and Taryn. That was really good information. And we did have one person who did mention that they would like that information sent to them. And so I did also copy down Mary's email address if we need it. So if anybody will take like 30 seconds and just see if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask. If not, we'll move on to Debbie's presentation. Okay, here we go. Does NMSCA have experience working with PHAs around FYI vouchers, youth exiting foster care? What role has NMSCA taken on with the local FYI program in collaboration with the PHA and local MDHHS Child Welfare Office? That's from Mitchell.
Hi, Mitchell. I wish I could answer that question for you. We do not have any youth services in our area. That is obviously something we're collecting data on right now to get supports, but I'm sorry, I can't answer that specifically for you. I don't know if there's anyone else on the call that has youth services that could.
I do know, so Mitchell, I know Genesee County has done some work around that. So the Genesee County Public Housing Authority did a project with the local child welfare agency. And I'll put my email address. One of the programs I work with is Homeless Youth and Runaway. So I have a little bit of familiarity with that. So I can put my contact information in the box and you can reach out to me and I can get you connected to those folks. Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, I actually wrote down a couple, but we're going to let Debbie go on and do her presentation first, and then we'll see what kind of time we have left at the end. So Debbie, you want to take over?
Excuse me. Yep. Let me just pull up my presentation. All right, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Today's presentation, I'm going to be going over just a basic overview of the Housing Choice Voucher Program. In this presentation, I'm going to be talking about the different types of vouchers that we have, our application process, our wait lists, our wait list draws, our applicant briefing, finding a unit, leasing up, and the roles and responsibilities of applicants, landlords, and MSHDA. So MSHDA does administer a variety of vouchers. This is just a few of the programs. We have lots of different special types of vouchers. We have the project-based voucher, VASH 811. The Housing Choice Voucher Program offers mobility to eligible families so they can search for suitable housing anywhere within the state. And really dependent on the type of voucher that that family has, they may be able to move with our portability process to other public housing authority jurisdictions. Our project-based vouchers are assisted units in developments that provide permanent supportive housing services. And those PVV participants will only pay 30% of their adjusted household income. Sorry about that, just saw that. Our VASH vouchers are those that are reserved just for veterans, and that's a referral direct from the VA. And then we have our Section 811 PRA program, which allows persons with disabilities 18 to 61 to live as independently as possible. This program was designed to expand the number of supportive housing units available in the state to promote the integration of low-income people with disabilities into the community who might otherwise be institutionalized or become homeless. And the Department of Human Health and Human Services is the referring agency for this program. The Housing Choice Voucher Program has a homeless preference that's verified through the local HARA, and those wait lists are monitored to make sure that there are enough applicants in each county. MSHA staff will evaluate each county wait list, and we'll open them when the residency applicants are depleted. So first, we will pull from the homeless wait list, and then we'll start pulling from our residency. Individuals that are interested in the project-based assistance must be referred from the HARA. And once the HARA certifies the preference for the permanent supportive housing, the individual can apply to that development. And then our VASH vouchers, as earlier said, are referred from the VA, and the 811 voucher assistance is from MDHHS. Our housing choice voucher waitlists are separated by county, and the individuals are certified as homeless will get pulled first, and that certification is valid for 120 days. For them to retain that homeless preference, the Homeless Service Agency must recertify the applicant meets that preference every 120 days while they're on the housing choice voucher list. Once our homeless list has been exhausted, individuals that when we had our open wait list, if they had said that they lived or worked in the county that they applied in and were disabled, we would then pull that group next. MSHA will verify the disability through a Social Security disability benefits letter or through verification from a healthcare professional. And then once the wait list for the disability preference has been exhausted, then we will go to the living or working in that county. All applications that we receive are listed by date and time, and that wait list is maintained in Lansing. And then each individual project-based development has its own wait list that's maintained by the MSHA contracted housing agent and is separated by bedroom size. MSHA contracted housing agents will request names to be drawn when there are available vouchers to fill. And generally it's about 5 names for 1 open voucher. Once that list has been drawn, the housing agent will notify the applicant by mail so that they've been selected. And then MSHA will send notification to the HARA of the voucher pool so they can assist the homeless applicants with the paperwork. And if the applicant was drawn from the project-based voucher list, MSHA will notify the development. At that point, the applicant has 10 business days to complete and send back the paperwork to determine the eligibility. And if that paperwork is not received, the application would then be deactivated. For the verifications, MSHA must receive the following documentation to verify eligibility: proof of age, Social Security, criminal screenings, income, assets, and expenses. Once all verifications have been received, MSHA will determine if the family is eligible for the program. The household income cannot exceed 50% of the area median income, and they cannot have a debt owed to MSHA or any other PHA. If the household was evicted from a federally funded program, they wouldn't be eligible within the last 2 years. And then for drug-related evictions that occur in the past 3 years would also make them ineligible for the program for the last 3 years. Finally, the family must pass a criminal screening. We will deny an applicant if they've been charged or arrested within the last 3 months from when they were selected from the wait list for drug-related criminal activity. And if any household member has been convicted of drug-related criminal activity for the production or manufacture of methamphetamine on the premises of federally assisted housing, they're not eligible for rental assistance. Any household member that is subject to a lifetime sex offender registry is not eligible for rental assistance. And then MSHDA will deny an applicant if they were charged or convicted with a violent criminal act within the past 12 months, but we may review up to 24 months if there's a pattern of criminal activity. If there's an arrest or charge only, the housing agent will send the ICHAT, which is the criminal record, to MSHDA's policy team for review. Police reports are obtained to determine if the applicant has engaged in prohibited criminal activity. And then once that review has been completed, the policy team, and if the policy team denies the applicant, they will send that denial to the housing agent, and the housing agent will send the denial to the applicant. If the ICHAT has a guilty plea or they pled no contest, the housing agent will send the denial. And then once the applicant is denied, they can request an informal review to refute that criminal screening. And here's a list of some of the things that we review on the ICHAT. So we're going to deny if we see felony obstructing police, misdemeanor assault, burglary, larceny, stolen vehicles, homicide, felony assault, misdemeanor damages to property, felony weapons offenses. And I just gave an example of a denial based off of when somebody would be pulled off the wait list, and that policy would deny based off of it not going through adjudication. Before an applicant can be briefed, all required forms need to be completed. The MSHDA 1890 is filled out by the head of household that lists all the family members, income sources, assets, and expenses. The other required forms are the release of information, debts owed, citizenship, proof of age, social security verification, and verification of employment. Once all required forms have been received and the applicants, we've determined that the applicant is eligible for assistance, a briefing will be scheduled. The briefing typically takes between 1.5 to 2 hours, and it will discuss the program requirements. In the briefing, the applicant is also reminded that any changes in household composition or income must be reported within 10 business days. At the end of the briefing, a voucher is issued for 60 days. The applicant can request up to 2 30-day extensions. And if the family is disabled and having a hard time locating a unit due to the lack of availability of accessible units or special challenges that they're seeking in finding a unit, they can request a reasonable accommodation for another extension. And then an applicant with a disability has up to 6 months from the date of application denial to request a reasonable accommodation if their name had been removed from the waiting list due to failure to respond to a MSHDA notice. At the briefing, the applicant is given a landlord packet, a landlord list, and an estimate of affordable rent. Once the applicant has found a unit, a completed request for tenancy is submitted to the housing agent. And once the housing agent received that, the voucher time is suspended. The housing agent determines if the unit is affordable for the family. And for the unit to be affordable, the tenant portion cannot exceed 40% of their adjusted gross income. The landlord must provide proof of ownership and taxes. And then before the final step is that before the unit can be approved, it must pass housing quality standards. And then for project-based developments, the tenant portion is calculated 30% of the adjusted gross income. And those applicants are assigned a unit within the development based on a subsidy standard. And then the landlord doesn't, the RAFTA doesn't apply for these requirements because that's contained within the owner proposal for review and acceptance. Once the unit has been approved, the applicant can move in. The housing agent will provide a housing assistant payment contract to the landlord. And then what we call the HAP contract. The HAP contract with the completed lease is sent to the housing agent for review. And then the housing agent will review the lease, HAP contract, and RAFTA to make sure that they match. And that's the rent amounts, lease start date, and the utility responsibilities. It generally takes between 45 and 60 days for the landlord to begin receiving payments from MSHDA. MSHDA 34 is sent to the landlord and tenant, stating MSHDA's portion of the rent and the tenant's portion of the rent that they pay to the landlord. The tenant cannot pay more than what's on the MSHDA 34 unless it's a special amenity such as a carport fee, shed fee, cable. Those are just a few. And then if the applicant doesn't move into the unit, the contract is voided out. The tenant is responsible for paying the security deposit, the monthly rental amount, tenant supplied utilities, reporting income and family household changes, and following the rules of the program in their lease. The landlord is responsible to inform the housing agent if the tenant is not compliant with the lease, ensure that the unit follows HQS, and collecting rent from the tenant. If an applicant or participant is having issues with their case, they should contact their housing agent first. And if that can't be resolved, they should be referred to MSHDA and they will be given the appropriate contact for the appropriate resource specialist. And that's the presentation.
Thank you, Debbie. I just wanted to give time for people who might have a question. I did have one question that I can ask you while others are thinking about theirs. When it comes back to that part where there can be a review, you know, if a person is denied for a voucher and a review can be requested, what does that review process look like? And what are the timeframes about it? So a person gets a denial letter and they want to have that reviewed. What does that look like?
Once they're denied and they get the review request, you'll get the informal review document that comes with the denial. And I'd have to take a look, but I believe it's 15 business days that they have from the denial to send that in. And with any, so they have multiple opportunities to send in supporting documentation prior to that review. But I would say that what they can do if they get arrested for assault, or maybe they were going through like a mental health crisis and they have a caseworker, if they're going through supportive services, any of that documentation can be submitted for review to look at extenuating circumstances behind the arrest and the arrest charge or the plea.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. We did have somebody ask a question. If someone is pulled from the wait list for an HCV, but they were denied for failure to respond, if they have a disability, they have 6 months to appeal. That's a question.
Yep, they would contact MSHDA or the housing agent, ask for reasonable accommodation, and then we would take a look into that case. So we do take these case by case basis.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know a couple of people asked about slides being available. I do believe that if we have them, they will be made available, but I don't know if I've got anybody. I will have to check on that. So we will look at that. So I'm gonna, we'll let more people come up with more questions. I actually want to go back to our folks from NEMSCA, talking about some of the programs that were available for people participating, like the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. in some of the other ones. And I was just kind of wondering about what are the timeframes that those services are available to somebody. So, and are they available even without possibly being on a voucher? Like, so could somebody get family self-sufficiency program and not be on a voucher? Or is it specifically tied to that program? And then how long does it last while they're on or while they're receiving a voucher? Or is it just up until when they get placed?
Good question. Thank you for asking that. So the family self-sufficiency is for voucher holders only. Same with the Key to Own program. Those are for voucher holders only. Like Elise and Taryn were saying in our building partnerships, we are very unique where we ensure that individuals that are exiting rapid rehousing are getting onto that voucher because we don't have permanent supportive housing here. So it's either you get your rent paid for 6 months and then you're on your own, or you go from rapid rehousing to housing choice voucher. So we use it as our permanent supportive housing essentially. And so when they are working on their housing plan and their exit plan, they put the rental counseling, the Key to Own, the financial self-sufficiency program right into their housing plan. So it's almost like this is a requirement. It's not a requirement, but it's something that they work on to get them enrolled in that. And having the financial self-sufficiency staff member employed in our department is helpful as well. But if they're not right in with your department, I would talk to someone that can make that decision and make sure that you do have a partnership with them. When I got into this agency, the financial empowerment department was separate from the homeless department. And so eventually it took us 3 years, but we were able to combine. And so that we had that partnership and had that person right on our team and attending staff meetings. So she was like, hey, I see you have this housing plan and this exit plan. Can we put FSS on it so that when they're transitioning into the voucher, they know what to expect? And same with our housing agents. They throw out the FSS program as well when they're enrolling. So they're hearing it from our specialist, they're hearing it from the housing agent, and then they're contacted once they are vouchered up. So that's how we make sure that they're on that financial or the family self-sufficiency program. There are eligibility requirements for that program outside of having the voucher, but the majority of our voucher holders they are eligible for that. And then as far as the financial empowerment, so the home buyer education classes, the rental counseling, the budgeting, it's eligible for every client that is in your program. Even if they're not in your program, you can still refer them out to those financial empowerment programs. And every agency kind of molds their own programs. We just created the program called Financial Empowerment, but it is funded through MSHDA and the Housing Education program. So there's 2 individuals that work at the homeownership division within MSHDA that fund these programs and give us the parameters. And that's kind of where we decided to put our efforts and where we see the biggest need for that. So I would suggest if you are a rapid rehousing or a permanent supportive housing and people are getting leased up on housing choice vouchers, that you make that a part of your exit plan, is what case management options are available to voucher holders, because they go through your programs, which rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, where they get these intensive case management supports. And we want to make sure that they have those opportunities followed into the voucher program. So I would suggest that you reach out and see who has those services in your area. And they might not be labeled exactly how ours are, but it's essentially rental counseling, budgets, pre-purchasing, home buyer education. So if you see any of those key terms, you know you're talking to the right person. And if they don't know, other agencies have much larger financial empowerment than we do. They'll know who to hook you up with. So that's what I would encourage.
Great, thank you. And I had one more, which had to do with talking about, and I think Elise was talking a little bit about this in terms of landlords sharing concerns or questions. And I was wondering if when you folks met with, or I'm sorry, not landlords, but public housing authorities, PHA housing agents, I was kind of wondering, is there a particular set of concerns that you see most frequently that people can kind of be prepared for when they're talking to, that this might come up in conversations with your housing agents?
So thankfully for us, we have five or six PHAs are in our entire service area. So if one turns us down, the other one's saying yes to us. And the majority of them have all been in our local planning body since before I've been here. So I would start there, make sure that they're invited to your local planning body. Education is the first step. A lot of these landlords and PHAs don't know that homelessness exists. They're so caught up in the leasing individuals up and keeping their apartments maintained, and they lose sight of why they started working for public housing in the first place. So I would encourage them to attend your local planning body, or at least get them on your email groups with your horror reports or your COC updates, things like that. Again, educate them on what's going out on the field, in the field. Also let them know, like, what can you do for them? So we already do leasing negotiations for our clients. Remind your PHAs that you can be that go-to person in between your client and their secretary, or, you know, however it is. The private landlords, we have a little bit of a struggle with the housing inspection because they don't know what to expect. So we try and educate them as much as we can with that. PHAs, not so much, because they already have a standard to meet. But just letting them know the weight we can take off of them. It's probably the biggest one. So educate and then let them know what you can do for them. So you'll be there for lease negotiations. You'll make sure that the client shows up on time. You're going to be doing home visits, which is huge because then you can watch their apartment. And more times than not, since you are you're pretty much an ally at this point because you've gotten them off the street, you've gotten them their goodies to get them set up with an apartment. They're more apt to let you in the home. Where a landlord, where they've met one time at a lease signing, they are going to resist that maybe, or what is the landlord looking for? Where with us, the clients are landlord and the landlords are client and the clients are client, right? We got to appease both of them. So just make sure the landlords are aware of what your services can be offered. And it may seem redundant to say the same thing over and over and over again. But when your PHAs are only leasing up, you know, one person every quarter, they forget the services that you can offer as a case manager and getting them ready. And so I would say those are the two biggest things. I hope I answered that. I feel like I spiraled a little bit there, but
no, I think that was great. I think all of that was really, really good information. So thank you. I'm going to give it 30 more seconds and we'll see if any questions come through. And if not, we will release people for the rest of their afternoon. Unless there's anything, is there anything that any of our speakers want to make any last comments on?
I'll just say one thing, maybe one thing. So we've NMSCA recently applied to be a permanent supportive housing recipient, the rural initiative with HUD. And so we were knocking on PHA doors to develop partnerships that we haven't before. And I actually met with the director over at Northwest for Housing, and she was really helpful. And she kind of gave me a little bit of encouragement that she didn't maybe know she gave me, where she reminded me that it can take a very long time to build these relationships and get out to some of your community partners. And you know, Northwest has 10 counties, we have 11, so she gets it. She gets the vast majority and the geographic challenges. So if you ask once and they say no, don't give up, because you gotta, just like you gotta establish your You got to establish that relationship, just like you do with a client. You got to do the same thing with your community partners. And the biggest thing that I have heard from feedback in this position is the consistency. So our HARA has been consistent, our local planning body has been consistent, and most importantly, our COC has been consistent. Not just with employees, but the messaging. And they have shown that when we create goals and outcomes, that we follow through with that. Either we show them that we're successful or that we're unsuccessful, and this is what we're doing to be successful next time. So please be transparent with your partnerships. Let your guard down. They're going to say yes eventually. But like the staff over at Northwest encouraged me again without encouraging me, that she was successful in all of the great things that Northwest was doing, and Northeast is getting there. We just have to keep trying and keep asking, right? So the worst they're going to tell us is no, and we're in the same position as we are. So if you need to get that MOU and they're not answering you, or they're questioning it, offer to do a presentation to their board, or offer to come to a staff meeting. Sometimes your presence and that personable communication is what's going to get you there. So I've been learning how difficult it is to get MOUs with your PHAs, because it's sometimes a scary thing. But again, just keep trying, because you'll eventually get there. And if you don't, you get an opportunity to educate.
Wonderful. I think those are excellent last words of wisdom. I think so much more is done once we build relationships with folks. So, and sometimes, yes, it takes a while. So great. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. And thanks again to our speakers. We really appreciate the wonderful wisdom that you've shared today. And I think everybody got a lot out of it. So
Thank you so much for having us.
thank you.
Thank you.